Let's start. Here with us today
Okay.
is Jentry Anderson, and she's a UFO researcher. Today, we would like to get to know you a little bit better. So, if you don't mind, tell us how your journey into the UFO field started and how it affected or maybe even changed your life.
Okay. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I would be on this path. But to give you a little bit of context, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a small town outside of Tulsa, in a Southern Baptist family, very religious. We moved to Atlanta in high school, and I eventually moved back and got married. And then in 2017, I went through a divorce, which led my family to just completely like cut me out and off of their lives. So that was just like a huge shock to be suddenly familyless, but like me and my kids, but no Christmas events, nothing like that. It was just very bizarre. And it drove me to really study religion. I started dating a guy who was a historian, and so I got hooked on the history of the fall of the Roman Empire, and then Egyptian and Greek history and mythology. And I really dove into it research heavy. And for a few years, I just became pretty agnostic, borderline atheist, given my parents' threats that God is going to come back with a vengeance and stone me and my children to death. I'm like, okay, well, that's not really a God I want to worship. So I'm out. I ended up having, after a few years of just this research heavy studying biology, and I kind of got into quantum physics a little bit. And that, then as soon as I did, I had a premonition, and it just completely shattered my perception of reality. And I dove from that point on heavy into figuring out, like, from a scientific perspective, how something like that could happen. And began reading books on with from Bruce Lipton, and then that led me to Wayne Dyer and Michael Singer, and I really dove into the research on quantum mechanics, and then I was curious about what the astronauts thought about all of this. And then I stumbled across Edgar Mitchell, and all of this is an effort to figure out how I had that premonition and several psychic experiences that started to happen after that. I could go into detail on those, but I'm happy to. But what really was the kicker was having a psychic tell me some things about my grandmother and my family history and their involvement in the KKK. I know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and ended up validating all of it. Then I was in about it was 2 summers ago. I was in Kansas City filming a reality TV show for my company. I own a commercial real estate company, and I was on this show for entrepreneurs. And while I'm there, and I had just gotten into the space piece of this, I had no interest in UFOs. I even heard Edgar Mitchell on a podcast talk about, or some show that he was interviewed on, talk about UFOs, and I just could not even go there at the time. But I was still like, wait, why is he talking about this? Okay, just a little tiny curiosity. And when I was in Kansas City, the last night I was there, I was talking to a group of people, or the cast, about they started talking about owls and UFOs, and they had seen close encounters of either the fourth kind or the fifth kind. I forget which one is the owl focused one. And that night, I saw a UFO, which I couldn't wrap my head around that at the time. But now looking back, I do realize all of these synchronicities that led up to this. And it was in Frank Lloyd Wright's building that he had built a steeple that had a light that shines all the way up to the sky. And it hadn't been on in 3 years. And they just turned it on. And I saw this light teetering the outline of this beam of light. And it was like dancing around it. And then it shot straight into the light and shot straight up into the sky. And so I'm thinking, this is the weirdest thing, right? I go home the next day, drive back to Tulsa from Kansas City, and I get in my car and I turn on a podcast, and the podcast is Mike Cleland being interviewed by a few people talking about owls, UFOs, and synchronicities. I listen to this podcast. I get home. I decide to go on a bike ride because I've been cooped up in my car for 4 hours. Go on my bike ride, and I realized I'd never seen an owl. Simultaneously, I'm having this conversation with Emily Trim on the side on Instagram. We're talking, she is one of the girls that was a child experiencer in the aerial school phenomenon in Zimbabwe in 1994. And we were having this conversation lackadaisically on Instagram, just back and forth. And she mentions owls. And I'm thinking to myself, because I'm riding my bike and I'm reading her message, and I'm just thinking, this is so weird. What is it with all these owls? Is this like by virtue of me having this relationship with her and just seeing what I saw last night, does that mean like the aliens are watching me? And it's literally as soon as I have that thought, two owls come swooping down right in front of my bike and are going right there with me. Then they fly up, turn around, and come right back at me and over my head. I am bugging. I get home
Yeah.
and I'm still sweating my butt off. I open my laptop and I Google Mike Cleland, the guy I just heard from the podcast who has written these books. And I find his contact email, and I sent him an email. And no less than 5 minutes later, he calls me. And so that sets off this relationship with him. And, he's very well connected, has been on Coast to Coast so many times. And so this starts this relationship with him that I developed for many months before even considering getting into ufology. I'm still right here just processing what is happening. I'm simultaneously having psychic experiences. For example, my daughter was sitting on the couch one day, and right here to my right, and she asked me for water. I'm coming from the bedroom, and right here on this table is her water bottle. And so I'm walking by and I grab it and I'm like, here you go. And she's like, well, that's convenient. I'm like, yeah, that is convenient. And then I walk over into the kitchen, and way over there on the island in my kitchen is a steel water bottle that's full of ice water from my bike ride. And it levitates across the room.
Oh.
And it hovers right over her head.
Oh my God.
And she looks up at it, and it goes over to her left, and it drops right next to her on the couch. Things like that. But then the meditations that I was doing also began to become very strange, in that I was getting this kinetic energy that was moving through my hands. And I had these psychic experiences with like a crystal ball. That's a long one. I'll go into more of that. But anyway, there were these psychic experiences that started to happen. And as soon as I saw the second UFO is really when it set everything off. So Earth Day of this year, 2022, so this past year, I was out with 6 friends having dinner on a patio at 7:00 at night here in Tulsa. It was beautiful, clear sky. And we see these 6 black objects in the sky. And they're very far away though. They're like whooshing across each other, like 5 of them just like dancing. Me being the one now that all my friends know that I'm into UFOs since all of this, I didn't want to be saying anything like that's a UFO. And all the boys are like, those are weather balloons. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can wrap my head around that. Sure. They're far enough away, all that. And then about 5 minutes later, my friend said, Gentry, there's your UFO. And we look up in the sky and there is this huge cube. And it is tilted on its axis and rotating horizontally across the sky in perfect form. And it looks like a black opal, like an opal, like the gemstone, but like a deep black opal that had, it was like the depth of it is what killed me. It looked like a huge gem in the sky, and it was perfect. After that, we saw this thing, and it didn't last very long. It went behind a building and then never was seen. We didn't see it again. And then we decided to walk across the street to a place called Mercury Lounge for live music. I had this musical ability all of a sudden where the band started playing music and I did too, in perfect synchronicity and perfect rhythm to them. Every single stroke of the guitar, every single beat, I somehow anticipated. And I can get more into that. But also that night, I came into my loft to sleep, and my friend was with me. We go to bed, and I wake up in my laundry room. And I'm laying with my elbows back on the ground, my legs stretched out in front of me. And I'm like, what the heck? Where am I? And I rest my elbows up, and I feel like, it's gross, this weird nuance of this, but I feel like the cat litter that they had trailed like on my elbow, and I wipe it off. I'm like, okay. And I get up and I walk over to my window, and there is a massive snowflake looking UFO that is covering the entirety of like my vision. And I can see in the intricate details of this the snowflake lines, it's like halls. And I have no feeling about it. Zero emotion. I'm not excited. I'm not scared. I am not in awe. I'm just simply looking at it. And I think to myself, my legs are so heavy, I've got to go back to bed. And so I just walk away. I walk through the hall, through my bathroom, and I stumble around. My legs just feel so heavy. And I walk into my room, and on my bed is my friend and me. And I just crawl over my friend and crawl back into my body. And I wake up now with sleep paralysis. And I wake up gasping for air and shaking and screaming about what just happened. Oh. So that was the event that kicked all this off, because as soon as that happened and this musical ability just it was instant. It's instantaneous. I can listen to any song, whether I've heard it or not, on the radio or live, and I can predict exactly how it's going to sound by the motions of my fingers and my body. It has evolved. It has turned into what was once just my fingers strumming a guitar is now my entire body. And this is not interpretive dancing. This is not that. This is something I've never heard before. I've researched the bad words out of this. When that happened, and I told Mike Cleland, he was really my go-to. He was my mentor, my guiding me through all this. He immediately put me in touch with 3 different people. One was Peter Robbins, Kathleen Martin and Stuart Davis.
Hmm.
And so Kathleen Martin is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. Peter
Hmm.
Robbins is the famous ufologist, and Stuart Davis is a musician and an experiencer, has been on Coast to Coast several times, and is really well known for his encounters with the mantis beings. So since then, I have had several experiences that are even more alarming, two of which included an ET encounter, very personal, and I will totally go into that, because the glorious thing about all of this and all of my experiences is that someone has always been with me to witness this. And so I'm happy to talk about wherever you want to go from here, but essentially that's what kicked all this off.
Okay, I would love to talk about something that you said earlier. You talked about this woman who was part of the aerial school incident. Did I get that
Mm-hmm.
right? So she
Yes.
was a witness of what happened?
Yes. Yes.
Very interesting. I also know a witness of the aerial school incident. His name is Francis. I met him at a UFO convention here in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany. I met him and he told me about the incident. It's very interesting. It was a great story and he's very
Yeah,
believable. Do you
he's
know?
black, right? I think I've researched him before.
Yeah, Francis, yeah, long black
Yeah.
hair. He's a very
Uh-huh.
skinny guy, very, very sweet and nice guy. He's very, very likable. He's very interesting. So, and
Cool.
he told me his story, and it was a great story. It was very interesting. What did this woman tell you about what she experienced?
Well, we've had a relationship for a while now. I've never actually dove into her experience about that specific event, because I've watched a lot of archival videos on her and her explaining the telepathic images that were downloaded. Um, so I felt like I had a pretty good idea of that. What I really have had conversations with her about is the experiences she's had since. So she has had ET communication since then, and she talks to me about Egyptian and mythology. We talk about gods and goddesses and her dreams and visions, and how she sees climate change, how she sees things happening in the world. Um, we talk about a lot of weird stuff, not typically just how did you feel about this experience. She talks about Hatshepsut and the rising of Hatshepsut, a goddess, coming, making a rain back in. I don't know if it's a reincarnation situation, but we talk about weird stuff.
Yeah, I guess someone who isn't into the topic, yeah, it sounds weird a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad
Well,
thing. So you have to get the knowledge at first and you have to dive into it and then it's not weird at all. So
yeah.
you talked about an ET contact. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that. What happened? What can you tell us about the
Okay.
ET contact?
Okay. I'm going to tell you the story, and it'll give you a few stories in between, because there's two that I really need to tell before the one that was very dramatic. So this summer, the first thing that happened that I need to talk about, it was with Stuart Davis. Stuart became a very close friend of mine and mentor in all of this. And the moment we began talking, we started having shared paranormal experiences, alarms going off at the same time, strange little things here and there. And by this time, the musical ability I had already, been set off. And I was out with some friends listening to live music, and I get a phone call at 12:03 a.m. from Stuart Davis. And answer it, and it is not Stuart Davis. It is this highly electronic, mechanical sort of voice, sound that I can't even begin to replicate, like AOL dial-up, but different. And it lasted 10 seconds. I've never heard anything like it ever, and it scared the crap out of me. And so I'm in this loud place listening to this for 10 seconds and hang up and run outside and call Stuart. He doesn't answer because he's not awake, because it wasn't him that called me. Then all of a sudden, I am given, I guess, some sort of download or visions of some sort where Stuart Davis is sitting in a what appears to look like some sort of penthouse with walls of windows and a chair that he's sitting in, and I can see his silhouette. And has one arm resting on the armrest and another one sipping a cocktail. Then visions of him looking down at me, and I am now too, as a toddler, like little, like melting crayons in the sidewalk in the sun. And then me like popping a zit in my parents' bathroom when I'm like a teenager. And all of this weird stuff. And I am freaking out because I'm thinking Stuart's an alien. He knows everything about my life. What is happening? I'm losing it. And this experience was very bizarre, especially because Stuart wakes up a little bit later and all the alarms are going off in his house, in his neighborhood. His whole family is awake. He's thinking, what are you doing, Jentry? I'm like, I'm not doing this. You're the one that called me. We just had so many strange experiences that led up to that point. So it was very bizarre. And now we're going to fast forward to, I go to Utah this summer for a UFO documentary that we started to film. And not we, but me and some people that I had met in Denver at MUFON, and affiliations with Spaced Out Radio. And we go to Utah. We are all in, mad filming mode, have all the equipment. We're testing, we're at Blind Frog Ranch, so we're doing EMF readings and all sorts of stuff. Well, they asked me to do try to do a CE5. They know I meditate a lot, so they wanted me to try to do a CE5 meditation where you essentially call in extraterrestrials or UFOs. And I'd never done anything like that. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll try. I'll give it a shot. So I go listen to Stephen Greer's stuff. And that night I led a group meditation with all of the crew. And I had to leave right after I finished the meditation to go back to our Airbnb because I was a host on Spaced Out Radio. So I had to leave. And so I'm like, dang it, they're all going to see the UFOs. I'm not. And I go back with my producer to our Airbnb. He's got his whole camera stuff set up at the Airbnb. It's just he and I'm in the living room. I've got mine set up. I'm live on radio. He's out there doing whatever he's doing. And the last 5 minutes of the show, he comes in and he's been pacing for a few. And I'm wondering why he's suddenly so anxious. In front of the camera, he's behind me, so the audience can't see, but he turns his phone around and he shows me this image of his FLIR image camera hooked to his phone, and it is a perfect outline of an alien. It is that. And I see it and I immediately think it is the guys at the ranch that I just finished doing that CE5. They just saw an alien, and I'm thinking they sent that to him. Well, if you go back and now look at that Spaced Out Radio show, you can see the whole camera glitching I freeze. My hair is like blown back. Like the color of the room changes. I'm like frozen in air. It's like my
Wow.
arms are, and I'm taken aback, and my head is pounding. And after the show ends, the next 5 minutes, I get through it, and I run out and find him, and he's outside, and he is freaking out, and I ask him, "Where's that picture? Did those guys send? Where did they send that picture?" He said, "Gentry, no, that was right behind you. I took that of you, right behind you." And then look up now, and we look up now, and we had this X across the sky. We can see the clouds. These are not clouds. This is in the thermal detection. There is this huge X right above our house that we're in. And we had it sent off to FLIR to have it analyzed, and it was inconclusive. They had no idea. There's that. Now we're going to fast forward. I'm back from Utah. I am getting on with life, still doing my thing. I go to a live music event again with friends, come back home, and I get a call from a neighbor of mine across the street from this window who is in this hotel. So he lives in a hotel half of the time between here and Tulsa. So he's been there for about a year. He watches my cats when I go out of town. He's 65. His name is Rick. I get a call from him, and he says that there is a man standing in the loft above mine, the empty loft above mine, just staring at him, just staring. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I walk over to the window, and I can see him in the window looking above me. And then catty corner underneath him, in a window below him, is a gray alien just standing in front of the window staring at me.
Wow.
And I am immediately like, shh, whoa. I put him on speakerphone so that I can take a picture. I would have taken a video, but I was not about to get off the phone with Rick. And I start to take a video or a picture, and I ask him, does he look human? Does the person above me look human? And he said, I don't know. I don't know. It's a figure. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay. So as soon as I go to take a picture, as soon as I'm pushing photo, this being gets up out of a chair and gets up to its right, and it starts shape shifting. It starts turning into a bunch of little tiny geometric
Whoa.
squares. And it literally shape shifts in front of my eyes into the profile of a man, and it hides behind the window. Okay, so now it's hidden. I can't see it. And then it pops its head out, and it had shape shifted again. It's now a gray alien, and it is doing the exact same pose right there on the painting that I drew.
Huh.
From the FLIR image camera, it is just popped out like that. And then it shape shifts again, and all of this is in my line of vision. It shape shifts again, and it goes back to the seat, and it's now a man, and it's now Stuart Davis sitting in a chair with his arm on the armrest, sipping a cocktail, staring straight at me.
Huh.
Sets the cocktail down, gets back up to its right, shape shifts again into the profile of an alien, and does the same pose. Then it shape shifts again, and it goes back into the chair, and it's now Stuart Davis sipping a cocktail. And it does this 3 times. And simultaneously, I'm on the phone with Rick. I am flipping my, you know what. Then I say, does it look human? And he says, I don't know. And then he shuts his blinds. He starts to shut his blinds. I'm like, what are you doing? Shutting your blinds. Where are you going? And then he just rolls them back up. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And then he just turns around and walks off. I'm like, where are you going, Rick? Where are you going? And there is an alien below you. And he just doesn't say, he just starts, I hear this muffling, this this muffle and this amplifying sound. And and I'm like, Rick, what are you doing? And I hear, he told me to get under the sheets, from the 65-year-old man. And I said, what? And then next thing I know, he's talking to someone in the room that is not me, saying, how did you get here? Who are you? Where did you come from? Uh, and then the last thing he said before I had to hang up, before I either had a heart attack or had to call, I did call 911. That's why I, I, I hung up the phone right before he said, I'll see you in hell. You know, I've never heard this person like ever talk like this.
Who told who that he see him in hell?
I don't know. I can't say that definitively. I can speculate that it's one of the beings that I just witnessed.
Wow. The fact that you're saying it shapeshifted kind of sound like the Skidwalker Ranch type being.
Yeah, man.
Whoa.
Well,
Kyle.
that's what everyone thought, too. Because I called, it ended up being a really weird night. I called the police. They came over, and I didn't want to say what I wanted to say, but I needed them to check in the loft above me and go check on Rick, right? And they wouldn't. To my knowledge, they wouldn't. But I did see them out like patrolling around after. However, I started texting Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio. He was live on the radio, and I messaged him in the group message about aliens. I said there was an alien here, and it would not send any of my messages online. I texted. Any time I used the word alien, the message was not delivered.
That's eerie.
It is. And so Dave Scott and Grant, my other co-host at the time on Spaced Out Radio, did this astral projection into my loft. You know, they were thinking, since I just got back from Utah, this is like some sort of skinwalker thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then Stuart Davis put me in contact with this wizard in Germany, and this whole thing kind of is a big deal, obviously, for me, because I can't believe this. And 3 nights after this happened, I was up crying myself to sleep in the middle of the night, trying to wonder if I brought a skinwalker home. And it's like 3 a.m. and I'm crying, and I shoot up in bed for no apparent reason and look over, and I see this black ball of energy, like an orb, just like really strong, and it shoots straight into my phone, and instantaneously Stuart Davis is calling me. I answer, and he says, what's wrong? What is going on? And I'm lose it, telling him with everything. And so we stay on the phone for a few hours talking through all of this. Well, then another strange set of synchronicities start to unfold with the mantis, and this feeling I had that it was not anything to do with a skinwalker. It had something to do with Stuart and his connection to the mantis. And then about 4 weeks after this event, I go to a place, a venue, a concert venue with some friends, and I'm outside with these 2 guys I'd never met. One of them has Tourette's syndrome, and the other one's dad designs telescopes. We were not talking about UFOs. We were talking about astronomy, and we're talking about the constellations. Not one mention of UFOs. I don't know these people. And all of a sudden, we see a UFO. And that's another story I could get into, but the gist of it is right after we see this UFO and it shoots off, I said, see, I told you that it wasn't going to keep my video or my pictures, because I made them watch me the whole time film this, and it deleted out of everything. And then the guy with Tourette's goes, because it's with the mantis. Right after I just got off the phone with Stuart for 3 hours talking about the mantis and wondering what the connection was, seeing this UFO, and random guy with Tourette's says that.
That is
and having
eerie.
no idea.
Is there any chance that all these crazy things that you saw with the shape shifting and all this stuff, is there any chance that it was just a dream or happened in your imagination? Or don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to down talk your
No,
story, but you know what I mean. Is there any chance that this could be?
I'll show you a picture.
It really, really, really happened, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it very much happened. I'm not
Yeah.
lying. Have no reason to.
No, I'm not
It
saying you're lying. It's just
rocked my world, and even the dream part. No, I mean Rick to this day, he text messages me and says, "Are you protecting me?" He
Mhm.
thinks that I was that he this came out of nowhere for him.
Yeah.
For me, this stuff had been happening.
Hmm.
So he remembers staring at that person, that figure, that shadow.
Hmm.
He does not remember shutting his blinds on me and walking away. He walked into bed with fully clothed. He never does that. This was like 11 something at night, and woke up the next morning feeling like he got hit by a bus.
Weird. Huh.
Yeah, weird. That's weird.
That is super weird.
You know, I do believe in stuff like astral projection. I believe in lucid dreaming, stuff like that. I think I had it before, and it can be pretty real. It can feel real. That's what my question was about. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying you're lying, but you know,
Oh, I know you're not. I'm sorry to make it sound like that. It's more
no,
so
it's all good.
the that's the irony of this whole thing is I've had someone with me or more people with me when
Yeah.
I've had all of these experiences. Any sighting I've had, I've had people right next to me. It's almost like meant to be like, you're not crazy. You have how many times I have questioned whether I'm crazy or not is endless.
Yeah.
Am I going nuts? Are my parents right? Am I going to hell? I mean, is this possible? Am I delusional? Am I hoping that this does happen because I'm traumatized by my family abandoning me? I've thought through all of that, and it's
Yeah.
every day I'm validated more and more, even by my own kids, who have had some strange experiences too.
Hmm.
And I've been shielding them from this, just keeping, I'm open about it, and I will talk to them about it, but I'm definitely not one to pressure them or put this on them. I mean, it's heavy, it's a lot,
Oh
but
yeah.
they've had their own experiences that have come to me, and they've been positive.
I think it's very interesting. I'm very skeptic when it comes to all that stuff, even though I experienced stuff myself. And I think I had some paranormal experiences. I don't know what to think about it. I had some strange things happening here at our house. I try not to think too much about it because I don't know what it was, and it wasn't that spectacular. But what happened to you is pretty crazy. Yeah, and it makes me wonder. And the fact that it's not only you talking about stuff like that, it's so many people talking about stuff like that. Not exact the same thing that you happened to you, but do you have an idea, or do you sometimes think about why does stuff like that happen to me? Why me? Do I have
Hmm.
special extra connection to somebody out there, or why did they pick me to experience stuff like that? Do you think about that?
Yes, I do. From my understanding and from what I can gather is that, first of all, every single time I have this doubt, and it creeps in all the time, or thinking, was any of this real? Is this happening? I can just turn on a song and start to play it, and I'm instantly validated. Why me? I don't know. I think that it has something to do with the trauma that my family generationally has caused. There's been satanic ritual abuse, not from, I've never experienced any of this, but members of my family have, and including my mother, who was subjected to some of this as a child, my family's involvement in the KKK.
Hmm.
And I think there's something to do with all of it, some sort of I'm the free-spirited one of the family, you know, the free-spirited child, always have been. So that's probably why me. But I would imagine it's some sort of karmatic mess I'm supposed to clean.
Or you could be a star child or indigo child.
I don't even know what that stuff
Connection.
is, but
Oh,
I've heard of it.
Me neither.
I haven't even gotten into that whole piece of it because I'm still processing these 2 years of experiences and psychic experiences and the fact that I can play music like this. I've never
no,
touched an instrument in my life.
that is pretty phenomenal, actually. Just pick up an instrument and start playing it. I heard stories where people had like severe accidents with their brain accidents where like they never painted before, and after their brain accident they started painting like a genius. Like you could just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, like a near-death experience or something.
right, exactly. It like opens up something in our brain that we never thought we could. And yeah, exactly. If your trauma broke through something like that,
maybe, or some sort of something that day that we saw the cube UFO. Like I was put on a different frequency or something, or I'm in tune with some sort of harmonic resonance.
What happened when you saw it? Did you hear a sound? Did you feel anything? Did it do something to you? Just want to try to understand.
No, I didn't feel any pulsing or rushing sensations. We just stared at it in awe. Like, what could that possibly be? This cube rotating in the sky. And it was glorious. It was gorgeous. I mean, it was like a black opal, like just, it was sentient. But I didn't have any rushing sensations. The only thing, okay, so here's another weird thing. Whenever the musical thing started, the band, this is a very ironic part that I've talked to the band even since then about this, and they have no recollection. They don't even remember this part. But right before this started, right before they started playing, I was sitting on my friend's lap. I had gone up to say hi to her, and I was like, hi, you know, sat on her lap real quick and gave her a hug. And she pointed at the band and said, you know, why are they all staring at you? And I thought, I don't know, maybe I look cute today or something, you know, I'm thinking, what? She's like, no, seriously. And so I look over, and the drummer has this drumstick pointed at me. And both of the guitarists are standing up, just pointing straight at me. And they go like this. They raise their arms in synchronicity, and so do I. They go and take this deep breath in, and I instinctively stand up and I'm doing it with them. And then deep breath out. And they did that 3 times. And I did too. And they went 1, 2, 3. And I just like, boom, just, I don't even know how. I looked at my friends. I'm like, what is happening? How am I doing this? I mean, it was like they were like, what the hell? Like, you know, I had people asking me if I was an angel. It's gotten pretty wild here in Tulsa. Let's just say that. It's no secret that I have this ability. Certain bands and venues, I guess you would call them, ask me to come play. Like they'll sneak me some money if I do. And it's just evolved a lot. It's hard to wrap your brain around. It's hard for anyone to, and it's really hard to see unless you're there. The musicians mess up, so do I. So they make something up on the fly. I'm right there with them.
That's so awesome.
It's like the people have gotten very nervous. I had one guy almost like pass out. I had a trumpet player. I had to like go, and they asked me to go back and talk to him and convince him that I'm not reading his mind.
That is pretty intense. Like you must be blowing people away left and right. No, I'm just trying to just hear a song and then just pick up an instrument and just play along with it. It's just insane. And it's cool. And it's just I love this. There's so much mystery in this world. I feel like Earth is the Disneyland of the galaxy, with so many different entities and ETs and everything in it. That kind of like we can tap into, and other weird. Again, that's very
There's
interesting.
a plethora, I think, of non-human entities residing on Earth and in Earth.